we'll get kick started. Hey everyone, I'm Lilia from Territory 3 Kiwi Landing Pad Reimagined. We're a nonprofit organisation with the goal of supporting Kiwi startup founders that are going global. But this year we're putting a bit more emphasis on connecting Kiwi founders with the States. So that's why I'm over here at the moment, going a few different states, meeting people in places, with the goal of being able to make connections for me to help support you guys when you're looking to expand over here or visit or just learn more about setting up your business in the States. So that's why we've got today's webinar, which is super exciting. We've got Niel and Greg from co-founders of ZippyAssist and a bunch of other businesses as well, which we can get to later. And they have a lot of experience in setting up in California. So that's the sort of main theme that we'll be chatting on today. But I'd love to pass over to you guys to do just a bit of your background. Where are you now? How long have you spent in the States so far, and then maybe a little bit on ZippyAssist as well. So I'll pass over to you, Niel, if you want to do a bit of your background and who you are.
Yeah, sure. So both Greg and I, co-founders of ZippyAssist, we're both New Zealanders. We both went to Kelston Boys High School in Auckland, and Greg and I were best mates in high school back in 1983. And I kind of went off on I came to America on a basketball scholarship many years, ended up just staying and going back and forth playing basketball in New Zealand, and then moved back here 25 years ago and landed in the vending machine industry, and which I've never left. And now I've got multiple businesses sitting on top of this industry. And then one of them is this business that Greg and I co-founded, ZippyAssist.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Cool. And Greg, if you want to do a little bit of your background as well.
Yeah. So as Niel mentioned, he and I go back a long way. And when Niel went off to do his basketball thing in the US, I stuck around in New Zealand. And actually, my background is in design and architecture. I did an undergraduate degree in architecture. Just always been really interested in experiences, environmental experiences. And at the time when I was studying there, the web was starting to become kind of a big thing, and I was really interested in the technology. And so I kind of started to veer into that, but still with a perspective on, what is the experience and design. And that led me into things like doing just web design, experience design. I was still doing a lot of graphic design at the time, and spent a lot of time, working in that area. That led on to doing design studio stuff, working in marketing, advertising, and also, but underneath all of that, still had a kind of an entrepreneurial spirit, I guess. Had lots of ideas, lots of inspiration just coming out of the whole web technology stuff that was happening at the time. And so started tinkering with a number of ideas, just almost as, little side hustles, which is not uncommon for Kiwis. We always like to, tinker. Yep. And so certainly I had that streak in my own personality. But I had a day job, had a family, and all that sort of stuff. So we continued to chip away at that sort of stuff. Anyway, Niel and I reconnected probably about 15 years ago, and I think it's actually really relevant to today's webinar, because the circumstances around which that happened was I had an idea that I took to Auckland Startup Weekend. I think that was 2012. Okay, so going back a little over 10 years now. And worked with a very small team over a very busy weekend, as Auckland Startup Weekends tend to be. In those days, Kiwi Landing Pad was actually giving away 30-day trips to the US if you won a particular prize. And I was the recipient of that prize. And so I winged my way over. I think it was a year later, actually, that managed to get my stuff together, and I felt comfortable enough to do it. And into the welcoming arms of Niel, my long-term buddy, who was in San Francisco. And I remember him picking me up from the airport on my Kiwi Landing Pad 30-day trip. And we kind of just started off from there. Now, that was an amazing experience. And for one reason or another, we weren't able to get that venture off the ground, but it was the seeds really for what Niel and I are really working on today, which is that ZippyAssist venture. But it all started with Kiwi Landing Pad.
That's so awesome to hear. Yeah, definitely way back before my time being involved in Kiwi Landing Pad, but hoping, we can still kind of be of similar assistance for Kiwis looking to head over. Awesome, cool. And can you give us a rundown on what ZippyAssist is? What does it do? What's the problem that it's solving?
So yeah, I'll jump in and then describe sort of the overall, and then Greg, you can dial down into the actual solution. But so my industry, I'm in the vending machine industry. It's a $29 billion industry, just like so many little industries in America are. Yeah. And when I first came here 25 years ago, I really had no skills because all I was doing was bouncing a ball and shooting in a basket. So I showed up here, but still with that Kiwi entrepreneurial spirit. I landed in the vending world and I've never left. And there's always been two big problems in our industry. One is we're known for unhealthy food, which we're changing now with new technology. But the number one thing is just really bad service around unattended. So anything with a machine where you go and put money in, just there's no service aspect to that except calling a 1-800 number. And so our solution, ZippyAssist, is a text-initiated system that helps with customer support. And then we've got just a bunch of things that we've branched off that with this product that's really amazing and really picking up steam right now.
Yeah, so I think that summarizes it really well. The solution is essentially providing customer support in unattended retail or self-service environments. So pretty much anywhere where a piece of equipment is provided to a consumer or a user, but there's actually no one on site to be able to support it. We provide a channel in which that consumer can connect to the provider of that equipment for service support or wherever it might be. It's a little bit different from other kind of support services where often you've got email at hand or all that sort of stuff, and it's easy to know who to connect because often it's through a website. Just click on a contact us, whatever. But at a machine, it's often not that obvious, and so we just make it easier for people to open up and provide that type of support at unattended.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, hopefully that the listeners, that gives you a good idea on the background of what ZippyAssist is and the overall business as well, that Niel's been running for, was it 20 something years now?
So I've been in America 25 years, but I was a sales rep in the industry for 10 years, just roaming around America selling a variety of products. And I could see a need that no one was helping this older community with digital. So I jumped in with VendCentral about 14 years ago, and we basically started up a web design / marketing company helping these older clientele come online effectively. Yeah. So VendCentral now has 18 employees. We've built about 500 websites for vending machine companies all across America. And now that's branched into full service marketing, social media, content creation. And then this ZippyAssist product is more around customer retention, just helping clients keep their customers happy.
Awesome. So I guess if I were to ask the question, like, why California, why the States, would your main reason be because you already had the networks and everything over there?
Greg, do you want to hit that one?
Yeah, I think, well, in our experience, that's right. If I step back to this earlier venture, this KLP 2012 venture, and kind of compare and contrast it with what's happening now. When I was thinking about what to do with that particular business, we were just interested in that from a space where it was obviously a big market. We felt that there was a need. And I think also more than anything, we felt that there was an investor appetite within the US to be able to fund something like we were building. Now, that was I think an educational experience in that what I learned was all of those things are true, but things can happen quite slowly, or not in the order that you anticipate, or you can't quite get the right person, or you get the deal but you don't get the investment to be able to support the deal. And so there's a lot of moving parts. Fast forward to what we're doing now with Zippy. Now, Niel has been there, kind of embedded in the US for 20 odd years. Yeah. So the difference in this case was, with the idea, we actually knew the customers that we would implement it with. We kind of had an idea of what the solution should be. We had the customers, and we also had opportunities with investors to be able to fund it. So it was kind of set up. And that's really why, from my perspective, I felt that it was worth chasing down this particular opportunity, was because Niel had already been there and kind of set up a lot of that relationship infrastructure.
Yeah, it's a good kind of flow-on business where you've already got some knowledge of the ecosystem and the market to be able to jump in there with a new product, which is really useful.
Yeah.
And just a quick question here that's come through from Ryan. Does ZippyAssist actually provide the support response, or is it the comms channel to the provider who then provides the support?
Yeah, great question. So it's just the channel. We provide it just a simple, because operators they're operations people, they're not user experience design people. So what we have built is really a way that that customers can use, which is easy for them to reach out to the operator. And we give the operator a few tools to be able to kind of better respond to the customer when they do. My background is I spent a lot of time in advertising. And one thing that always stuck with me was I worked with a guy called Paul Katmer, a great creative director. And I remember him saying to me one time, our job is to turn whatever the business owner wants to say into something that the customer wants to hear. So our job is a translation job, and it's the same thing in product design. Like we have a customer on this side and we have someone who's a service provider on the other side, and we have to bring the two together. But often they have totally different expectations, and they want to communicate in different ways. So that's kind of where our expertise lies, and is knowing how the consumer really wants to engage, what the experience they're looking for, and kind of on the other side, the operator, in terms of delivering service, what they need from that customer. So yeah, we provide the channel.
Yeah, cool, awesome. Yeah, that's a pretty good explanation of it. And what kind of what do your customers usually look like? Would you say these are mostly so I know you do a bit in like office break rooms. What kind of range of customers would you say are your targets?
So currently, right now, it's my community of vending operators. So what a vending operator looks like is they're probably a mum and pop organization that started off small. Maybe they dropped out of corporate America because it was too stressful. They started up a little vending company that 10 to 20 years later is now a beast. It's a $20 million vending machine company, and they might have 3,000 to 4,000 vending machines throughout the city of New York. So the scale is ridiculous. These customers are older. They're probably in their 50s to 70s. They don't really get digital. And then they've got their kids coming up through the business who grew up in digital, who are saying, Dad, bring out the checkbook. We need to change what we're doing. So that's a typical initial customer of ours. But as we're doing quite well in the vending machine industry, we're definitely looking outside of that industry for anything unattended. Any type of machine that needs customer support will be our future customer. So we're just kind of branching out into that right now.
I think that's really an interesting thing to consider when you're coming to, I guess we're talking California specifically, but the US generally. Actually, no, this applies to California just the same. There's a real diversity in terms of digital maturity and awareness. And so I think if you're kind of new, or maybe your first trip to the US or California for this, is especially if you're working in kind of digital, I guess, is you kind of need to leave all your preconceptions behind and really kind of take things at surface level when you arrive, because you'll find some people who just do not know anything about digital. They barely know how their phone works. To someone who may have designed the phone, right? So there's this kind of massive range of potential experiences. And when you think about the size of the opportunity and the variation in terms of people's abilities and experiences, then there can be really big opportunities for you to kind of carve in. And one thing that we're doing is a very, very specific thing. You know, it is just customer service in unattended retail. It's a very, very fine sliver, but of a very big, you know, broad problem. And that's what you kind of find in places like California and the US in general.
Yeah, definitely. And I've noticed it as well. There's an interesting, I mean, from a New Zealand perspective, we kind of see and think the US is very advanced and ahead of us. And a lot of that is true in terms of the way that COVID accelerated digital transformation over here. You know, like you get iPads at the dinner table to order your meals off. And, you know, whereas in New Zealand, we've only just been getting the like the QR codes that you can scan on the table to see the menu or your order. But there's, you know, they've got the QR codes almost everywhere over here. But then I'm also learning recently, they are still behind in a lot of things. Like the banking system is so behind, you know, some people still using checks. Even if you want to do the online transfer to pay an invoice for something, you still have to physically call up your bank in order to, like, you know, get the money moving. And so there's an interesting dynamic of they're advanced in some things, but they're not advanced in some other things, and you got to try to navigate that. And
totally. I remember coming to the US 25 years ago, and I had put cash away 25 years ago. And I showed up and I went to a gas station to pump gas, and I had no cash. All I had was my ATM. But the gas station didn't have the ability to take my ATM. So I had to leave my car there and walk down the street to the bank, get some cash, and walk back. So New Zealand seems to be more technologically advanced than America in some cases.
That's
true. In what we're doing.
Yeah, super interesting. Okay, so chatting on California, what challenges have you faced, you know, getting things off the ground over there, say in comparison to New Zealand, in terms of the differences that you see? You know, similar things to like that, the banking system.
Yeah, there are a lot of administration things which are different enough in California and the US in general to make things difficult for, you know, small beginning entrepreneurs and stuff like that. The banking example that you just had was perfect. For our business banking, we have a bank account in the US, of course, but that's Niel's, right? I am not on that bank account because I'm not a US permanent resident. Niel is. So just things like that are difficult. You know, setting up bank accounts if you're not a US permanent resident is tricky. Things like setting up businesses is the same thing. It can be difficult without having the, you know, right status over there. So, you know, like I would suggest one of the most important things is getting just good advice. Like there are startup lawyers over there that are really helpful. Just get a reference from someone to one who's used them before, because there's a lot of people who aren't really that good. But there are a network of ones that really know what they're doing, and it's worth it. And they will help you make sure that you get incorporated in the right state. You know, like for example, we're incorporated in incorporated in California. We're already talking about moving that corporation elsewhere. Every state is different. So, if, for example, there you can imagine. It's good to start thinking of them as separate countries. That's the kind of way that I have started to kind of think about the way that we operate, is that in every single state, you just try and think of them as actually, you know, separate companies with their own regulations and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I would definitely just you know, don't be put off by it, but just understand that, hey, you're at some point to be able to do just something as simple as setting up a bank account or maybe even incorporating, you're probably going to have to get some help. Whereas in New Zealand, well, we're New Zealand citizens or permanent residents, whatever, it is kind of easy. But even if you are, it's in the US, it's still a little bit tricky. So it's good to get help.
Yeah, just had a comment come through here from Rebecca Freeman, who is a great lawyer that is worth reaching out to if anyone needs advice on that. She just says you don't actually need to be a permanent resident to open a bank account, and that Silicon Valley Bank is used to and good at handling foreign nationals. That's pretty interesting. Have you looked at Silicon Valley Bank before?
No,
yeah, I have definitely, and that's a great point. That's a great point right there, because there's so many banks over here. I mean, you got the big behemoth and Bank of America, which suck if you're trying to run a small business, and then there's just a gazillion other little banks. So to pick out a bank like Silicon Valley Bank, that bank that's willing to help you, give you a big advantage.
That is true. Yeah, that's cool. I know Sarah from Silicon Valley Bank. She's super cool. We did a collab event with them in Wellington a couple of months ago.
I remember actually growing up in New Zealand, my dad was an electrician, he had his own business, and I remember he had an amazing relationship with his bank and his banker. So whenever he needed a little bit of extra money in the bank to cover payroll, he'd go down and see the bank manager. And ever since I've been in America, I've been searching for that relationship, and it's never been there. And it's just made things so much harder to do what I did, which was start VendCentral as a side hustle and then move it into a full business, and then to have the cash to back it along the way. No one at a bank wants to talk to me. I never had a credit score when I came to America. So I couldn't even get a $50 credit card. And just 100 little problems have gotten in the way that we've had to navigate around to where we are today.
Yeah, for sure. I know the issue of having no credit history is quite a big thing for us Kiwis. Jumping over there, and we've I've never had a credit card, and I don't really plan to get a credit card, but if I have to, I guess I might have to. But it's such a weird way that they manage that over here. And so you mentioned raising capital over there. So was that capital you raised for ZippyAssist, and what was that process like?
Greg, you hit on that one, because we just finished and it was brutal, a lot longer than we wanted, as we were running out of money and the bank account was emptying out. But Greg, give us a recap on that. It was kind of fun and long.
Well, so when Niel and I started off, we actually as Niel mentioned, he's got a couple of businesses, and he's got a business partner in those as well, and we were able to convince him to be our angel investor, and so he kind of got us up and started. And we actually thought that the money that we raised through that angel round would see us a long way. As it turns out, not long enough. And we got to a point where it quickly became obvious that we would need to raise more capital to keep the business going. And these things are difficult always, actually, to be able to understand. How much capital do you need? What sort of runway should you have? How should you pitch this to potential investors? Like, there's so many ways of actually kind of baking the cake that half the challenge is just knowing how to stitch that together. And we certainly face that problem, because the opportunities are so broad and there's so much opportunity. It can be difficult to say, this is what we're going to do, right? We're going to just do this, or we're going to do this. And now, if you're wanting to be a $50-100 million company within, 2 to 3 years, that's quite a different proposition to saying we're going to be a $1 billion company in 5 years, right? But that's the kind of thinking that you have to have now when you're a 1-2 person company and looking for your first round of capital. You need to be talking about, what is the opportunity, and where, what does it look like? Now, that might sound like a ridiculous thing to do, and in a sense, it kind of is. But that is the exercise, because what you're trying to do when you're having these conversations is imagine the future, right? Imagine what the future could look like, and that's where we want to go. That's what we want to explore, and you're sharing a story, you're telling a story. So we kind of had to do all that sort of thing. Now, our first version of that story was okay. And you'll find yourself going through a bunch of different iterations. And then when you get out to market with your story, like, hey, we're going to be, $100 million company, whatever it might be, you might get a pretty shocking reality check on the appetite for investment, either at a macro level, like, we were going out to market to pitch for investment at a time where inflation was just, exploding in the US. So every conversation that we were having with the VC was, and these are typical, love the idea, but the environment now is not great. So we were having those sort of conversations. So it was kind of back to the drawing board. Okay, so in this environment now, based upon where it is that we want to go, what should we be asking for? So we went through that process, and where we ended up was going for a pre-seed round using convertible note. Our group of investors are from the industry, and they're just not used to venture funding. So we had to come up with a funding structure that was familiar with them. So they're not familiar with safes and all that sort of, barely familiar with really convertible note funding. And so that's where we ended up anyway. And it took us a lot longer than what we hoped. We had to put cash in ourselves to be able to keep ourselves afloat. But we got there in the end. And so we put that down to being a really good outcome, and we feel as though that will get us a long way. But then what I would say is, don't leave it too late. Like, if you think you may need to have funding, then just start to think now about what that might look like, and even start putting together what might be a proposal or a pitch or something like that, because when you need it, it happens. It can take a lot longer than what you anticipate.
Yeah.
For sure, that's great advice. And I think a lot of founders do often find that the runway gets used up quite quickly and faster than they thought it would. And then things like, you can never predict COVID is going to happen. So that definitely put a spanner in the works, and, recession coming up and all the tech layoffs are going on. It's always worth raising more than you think you might need. Bit of extra safety barrier there.
Just little simple things like the insurances you need to cover to be able to operate over here to avoid litigation, is to hit litigation when it's going to come at you. All the business insurances that you need are significantly higher here, I imagine. I haven't been in New Zealand for a long time, but I imagine they're a lot less in New Zealand. Here, you've got all these fake IP infringement lawsuits that are bouncing around that you get dragged into. Because in America, it costs more money to win than just to quickly settle out of court. So everyone's just looking for quick little out of court settlements. And I'm not going to go into that because Greg knows I'll spend the whole hour talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of costs are you looking at? Are you, like, just to give a ballpark, are you talking like six figures in terms of what you're
No, not six figures, but still just significantly more than operating in New Zealand, which kind of chips away at your fund.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's definitely one of the things a lot of Kiwis probably wouldn't think of initially, is that kind of expense. Makes me wonder, are there any other expenses that we might not be aware of that you've come across over there?
Just trying to think. Actually, I know definitely. So when we look at our P&L, then the kind of typical costs that we look at that can be eye-watering is insurance. Not that it's crazy, but it's more than what you would normally pay in New Zealand, for example. But it's really it's more. It typically is insurance. So what you would normally find is that that it just if you don't have it, you're really taking on a huge risk, because litigation over there is pretty full on. But taking care of it, you can get. I think we paid under $5,000 for our annual, but that's $5,000, and that can that took a chunk of money out of our account that we could have used for something else, right? And then a lot of the other stuff is actually really isn't all that bad. We're a technology firm, so we don't actually have a lot of we use a lot of platform costs and stuff like that. But then there's things like renting an office, like that can get expensive, but it can be also really, really cheap. Niel's experience is starting off in a very, very small office in a complex where it was really, really affordable, and just basically going up from then as you get more people or you get more disposable income, then you can actually then start to scale up. So that's the other thing but by far and away the biggest cost is always people. It's always headcount. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the general wages, I guess, at least in the tech industry, are significantly higher in the States compared to New Zealand. And then now when you're looking at the exchange rate, it's not fun to look at.
Oh yeah.
And then like even eating out here, like I'll get a meal, just something basic, and then it turns out to be like 50 New Zealand dollars, even though I've chosen like one of the cheapest options, and it adds up so quickly over here. Which I think
too, around that compensation is benefits. When we were looking to raise a little bit more money and bring on a few more employees, one of the things that we needed to include in the package was the health benefits. It's a really big deal here.
Yeah.
This will be shocking to everyone on the call, but my family, my wife and I, with 3 kids, we pay $4,000 a month for our health insurance. It is ridiculous. But just little things like that. And, still at VendCentral, we have 18 employees. I still don't offer health insurance to my staff because it's so expensive. And I still consider, we're building up, and eventually I know probably within the next 12 months, I'm going to have to offer health insurances to my staff. Now, because it will be a group plan, it'll be significantly less than that $4,000, probably down in the $800 a month range. But it's still something that you have to offer here, or people just don't want to work for you. So it's been a real struggle for me to find 18 employees. I'm so lucky that everyone works from home, and I can go to a weird state like North Dakota and find some stay-at-home mum that has got a marketing degree that wants to come back into the workforce, and the husband's carrying the health insurances. So it's been difficult.
There's definitely one that we in New Zealand, we don't think of at all, really. I mean, we've got ACC that covers us, hospital bills are pretty much free for almost anything. We just pay for, the doctors if we visit the doctors. It's a whole nother world over here for sure. But that's a lot of money you guys are paying. Wow.
It's a chunk.
Gosh. What else have I got noted down here? Oh yeah, we were chatting before on different time zones. So obviously running a business across California, and I know Greg, you're in New Zealand, and Niel, you're often back and forth between New Zealand. Even this is something that I've faced recently, jumping between different states. It can be such a headache, like trying to plan things in different time zones and taking into account when everyone is working. What have have you found any hacks to help out with that, or what has your experience been managing being in different countries?
The hack is Greg has to get up super early every day while I have my coffee and get to work and get started. Poor Greg's got to crawl out of bed at 5:30 in the morning for right now in California time zone an 8 o'clock conference call. Because, when those sales come in, we have to take the call when it's convenient to the client. So sometimes, Greg's crawling out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning. And,
I literally have been in 3-4 in the morning in sales calls. But
especially when daylight saving hits and that California time zone moves to 5 hours difference. Right now it's 3, which is perfect.
That's
but
good.
on the East Coast, you add another 3, so now that 5-hour daylight saving is now 8. So East Coast customers need to be hit super early in the morning for Greg, especially in our community, because they all start, their vending trucks are getting out at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they're all back inside at about 1, and then the clients are wrapping it up around 2 or 3 in the afternoon. So the time zone has been quite difficult.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And I guess, because Neil, did you say you are a permanent resident of the US?
I am a New Zealand citizen on a green card for
Okay.
25 years.
Okay, cool. And the reason, what would you say is the reason that you aren't permanently based over in California? Would that just be, family or
I
lifestyle?
am permanently based here because
Okay.
my kids are here. I got 2 kids that work for me, and all
Yeah.
3 kids are not too far away. And then I've recently married in the last 3 years to an American, and she's like, "You were staying here." But I'd love to go back to New Zealand. Oh my gosh, I just was there 2 weeks ago, and
Yeah, I was gonna say you're often there.
come back quite a lot. But I tell you, one thing that Americans love, they love the flight of the Conchords, that show that the 2 Kiwi guys in New York put out years ago.
Yeah.
They love New Zealand. Americans love New Zealand. They love New Zealanders, and they also love basketball. And so I'm a combo of playing basketball and from New Zealand. And it gave me a massive advantage. Every time I walked into a call, honestly, we would talk about New Zealand for the first 20 minutes. And then I'd be like, "And what are you selling?" And then I'd introduce my little website design package, and boom, it was actually an easy sale. So New Zealanders have a huge advantage of operating in America because everyone wants to come to New Zealand.
That's true, and they often say they love our accents as well, which is great because
Exactly.
accent sounds weird.
I don't say mate a lot in my daily speech, but I tell you, when I get into a sales call, I'm dropping mates all over the place because I'm just trying to make them all laugh. Like grease the wheel to make a sale.
Good tactic. May as well use what we've got. It's our advantage. Found a
Trying for that time zone tool. I was about to say, with the time zone stuff, I'm just still hacking it. Like I used date and time, whatever, for a meeting thing. Like I just haven't come up with a system. I thought, well, I'll use Calendly, and people will use that to be able to. But actually, it's always the other way around. I have to coordinate with them, not them coordinate with me. So I haven't found a great tool. But I have a look at that suggestion, worldtimebuddy.com.
Okay, I'm gonna have a look at that.
I need a tool to help me. I'm hopeless.
Yeah, and it's such a headache when you're dealing with multiple time zones and moving between them, and like planning to be, when I'm planning to be in a different state, but someone wants to book a meeting with me, and when I'm in there and I'm like, well, right now I'm in this time zone, but and then everyone's changing, and yes, because even in Calendly is still hard to figure out at that level of planning. Cool. Thanks, Ryan, for the recommendation in the chat there. I'll check that out. Next question is around founder burnout. Have you been experiencing this? What do you both do to kind of stay in a well mental state and positive and smashing through the business in a way that is sustainable?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. So I was in corporate America for 12 years as a sales rep, and man, you talk about burnout working in corporate America here. We have a big thing that kind of probably stems out of sports in America is 105%. You've got to just go 105 all the time or you're a loser. And I hated that. And I consider myself to work really hard, but I'm certainly not going to work at 105% all day long. I'm going to burn out. So actually, VendCentral, many years ago, I designed that as a lifestyle business. So I don't work actually that hard within the VendCentral thing. I've got 2 managers that run it. We've got staff of about 17, but it's all designed just not to be too stressful. Because living in America, this big wheel over here is turning fast, and you can easily get caught up in that hype and be busy all day long. So VendCentral is designed to have an operation that's a little bit more relaxing. But fundraising for Zippy, trying to get those customers on to impress the investors, I mean, you definitely burn out hard.
Yeah, I think it's going to be different for every founder, and like Neil's like if you've only just met Niel, you know that he's pretty chill, right? No, so he's pretty relaxed. Probably not your typical, founder. Founders I know are wired other founders I know are wired a little bit differently. So everyone's going to be a little bit different. But I think the key thing is just to realize that it's real, like that, burnout is real, and that you really should every day just think about what can I do to avoid, mitigate, minimize burnout. Because if you don't, I think what you'll find is that it will bite you. So whatever works for you. So for me, it's exercise. I think that's the same for Niel as well. Then that's what you should do, and just think about it every day. Even if you can't get exercise every day, you're planning on, okay, well, not today, can't do it today because I just don't have time, but definitely tomorrow. And it's not big things. For me, at least anyway, it's not big things, it's little things. I know that if I get exercise, if I get outside, I'll just be way, way better. And if I'm better, I'll perform better and have a much better chance of succeeding.
Yep. Hey, Greg, if you capitalize on top of that too with the time zones, that can knock you out when you're getting up for 3:30 sales meetings on the East Coast. And then the customer doesn't even show up to the meeting. You can burn yourself quite quickly.
You can't get back to sleep, right? It's kind of like,
That is tough. I guess question, Greg, on that, have you looked at relocating to the US or why not for that?
Yeah, so a couple of reasons is New Zealand just suits me really well. Like I really like it here. I love visiting the US and Canada, as US and California. I haven't been to Canada. I'd love to go there though. We have a big customer up there. And I do spend quite a bit of time in the US. But I don't know, I just kind of like it here. And if I can achieve what I can by just spending short periods of time. I mean, I have the benefit of having Niel there. If Niel wasn't there, then I think it would need to be something more. We need someone permanently there to be able to, just manage sales and all that sort of stuff. So without Niel, you would need to be there. But that being the case, this suits me being in New Zealand and traveling there because I have my family here. I can work really effectively from New Zealand. If I was sitting in the office with Niel in California, in our Californian office, I'd be doing the same things as I'm doing here. I'd be jumping on, Zoom. I'd be talking to customers that way, or jumping on a phone, or sending them an email. So in terms of kind of engagement, it's very similar actually in terms of the sales process and stuff like that. Where the real benefit is in being there is working and collaborating face to face with Niel and the rest of the team and visiting customers. So that's why it is good for me to visit from time to time. But I don't. But personally speaking, I don't feel as though I need to be there permanently. And personally, I love being there, but I love coming home.
Yeah, for sure.
Not to mention, I would probably annoy the hell out of Greg because we'd be going to Starbucks every 10 minutes. Come on, Greg, let's go to Starbucks. Greg and I have two kind of way different skill sets. I'm kind of an ambassador, love to just roam around, meeting everyone, saying hi. Greg likes to sit at his desk and just work in increments of 15 minutes. Everything's planned. Me, I'll write my to-do list up in the morning and I'll push it to the side and do something completely different. And I probably drive Greg nuts. So I think he's being really nice right now about not wanting to relocate over here. I would drive bonkers.
Well, opposite attract. So it means, you're a good peer in terms of the work that you do achieve. So something's working there.
Hey, the interesting thing is, you don't have to live in the US to succeed there. I think that's the important thing to remember. I mean, you talk to John Holt and Mike Carden. I mean, they launched and sold their business using business visas. So it can be done. And I don't live there. I have the benefit of Niel being there. But it can be done. You don't have to be a permanent resident in the US to succeed. And the other thing I wanted to mention too was while I say, it's good to be back in New Zealand, one of the important things I think is you do need to spend time there to be able to get a feel for what it is like there. There's nothing like actually being on the ground there and just talking to people, talking to customers, understanding and feeling actually how big the opportunity is, and what the scope of the potential opportunities that are there, and just getting out and talking and networking. That's really, really super important. But if you can do all that without living there, then that's good too, and it can be done.
Yeah.
And that's such a great point, Greg, because we like probably a lot of people on this call, the technology is amazing. I feel our ZippyAssist technology is amazing, but it's our people. You've got to learn the people and where it's going to slot in there. And it's not logical. My customers are illogical. They make decisions based on some really weird rationale. And it's not until you sit in the office with them and just kind of listen to them and hear them that we can kind of slot our way into their tech stack. So that's just important for every now and then for Greg to be here and just bump around talking to these people.
Yeah. I mean, it would be, if there's one really key piece of advice, if you were thinking of doing this from New Zealand, is find a customer in the US that you can focus on. And that way you really can optimize your time and travel around that. Find a hero, 1, 2, 3 hero customers that you can really focus on, and use them as a proxy for the rest of the industry. Then that's a really efficient way of kind of getting launched, especially if you're doing an MVP or you're just trying to understand, how to, get a product market fit. Don't think too broad, and you can really do it efficiently.
Yeah, cool. That's some great advice. And that kind of flows onto a question that's come through from Bruce. What's the difference that you've found between selling in the US versus New Zealand?
Gosh, so I played basketball in New Zealand until I was 32. I played on the New Zealand team a little bit. I bumped around all the National League teams in Auckland and Hawke's Bay. And so I'd never really had a job before I came to America. So I kind of drifted into sales because I just like to talk a lot, I guess. So I don't know the difference between selling in New Zealand, but I tell everyone this. In America, I'm Niel from New Zealand.
Yes.
So that kind of leads me in the door. In New Zealand, I'm just Niel, and no one really cares. But just such a massive advantage of being from New Zealand and getting out and selling here is a big difference maker for me.
Yeah, I think it depends on how you're selling. We're kind of business to business selling, and I'm not sure that this is all that different from New Zealand, but it's what's worth noting, I guess, is that relationships are super important. A lot of the selling that we do really is on a personal level. The technology is technology, but people actually, technology will get them to the table, but it won't necessarily get you the deal. What will get you the deal is if you are someone that they can trust, and if you can really have a good connection with them in terms of being a good business partner, understand their business, spend time with them. That is really gonna, especially in these types of environment, with the way that we sell, at least anyway, in the product that we have, is that just understanding and spending time with customers is is a real critical thing. I don't know that that's too different from New Zealand, but certainly in the US, I found that that's been the story.
I had a big customer in Boston that I was going to a HubSpot conference, and I'd never sold this particular customer before, but because I was in Boston, I arranged to meet him. So it was me and another New Zealand guy who just happened to be out here. We sat down with this guy. He was a massive client, and we talked back and forth about the web projects that I could do for them. And he goes, okay, let me think about it and give you a call tomorrow. So he called me back the next day and he goes, Niel, I only want to do business with people that I can drink with. And you guys passed with flying colors. You've got the job. Boom. So, hey, us New Zealanders, we know how to socialize, and the Americans love that. So that was definitely an advantage.
Yeah, interesting way to get a new client. That's great that worked out really well in the end. Yeah, no, definitely. There's a lot of different ways that sales operates, New Zealand versus the US. And that again is something where it does help to either, have feet on the ground in the US or hire, a salesperson who already lives in the US to do your selling over there for you, which I know a lot of startups do, start to hire locally over there. And I just want to say we've just got a couple more minutes left. So if anyone does have any questions, this is your last chance to ask those in the Q&A or the chat box, and I'll keep an eye on those. What's next for ZippyAssist? I know you've just completed a raise, so super exciting. Congrats on that. But yeah, what does your growth look like over the next couple of years?
Greg, that's you.
Yeah. So we are, the challenge often in these types of, with most businesses, especially in the US, a lot of the stuff is not really around the technology. As we're a technology business, and technology is technology. It's not a matter of, can you build it? Yes, we can build anything. It's kind of, what is it that you're going to build and who are you going to sell it to? And so our challenge really is around sales growth, right? And that is, and a lot of what we're discovering in our particular market is we're new, right? And we're dealing with companies that are often intergenerational, so grandpa started it, 100 years ago, and it's gone down to the son, grandson, and stuff like that. And these people have been around for a long time. And they have dealt with a lot of people that have been in this kind of community. Yes, it's a very, very big industry, but still, it's still a community, and we're the new people on the block. So it's a lot of it is actually just letting people know that we're here for the long haul. That we're here to produce technology solutions for you in this industry, and this is what we have now, and it's ZippyAssist, and it focuses on something that you are missing. We know that there aren't tools available for operators in this channel, and this is what we're building for you, and we will do it within partnership. So a lot of it is actually just continuing to go to customers and operators in this industry and in this market and saying, we're here, we're not going anywhere, we've got a product, it's going to get better, and eventually you will be on it. So let's just chat, so for us, that's where it is. And we're actually really, really lucky in this capital raise that we've just closed. It was a pre-seed round, so there was no venture money. These are all people from the industry who have done very well and cashed out, essentially. And they're sitting around the pool, and they're not really doing much. And they've got a bank account full of money, and they love the industry. They know a whole bunch of people in the industry, and they know what we're working on. They're going, our industry needs this. These guys are delivering it. So why wouldn't I support it? So it's actually working with them to understand how they can help us get to our, next milestone, which is, we want to get to $1 million in annual recurring revenue before the end of the year. And that's a stretch target for anyone, especially for us. We're a small business. So that's it. That's where we're 100% focused on over the next, 6 to 12 months.
Awesome, cool. So would you be looking, to expand your sales team with the capital, or is it more the relationship building side that you'll be focused on?
Yep. So we're using that money to really open up channels. So what we're going to we're looking at doing it a number of ways. So really, it's kind of really around sales. And we're talking about a big country here, right? So we can't do it all ourselves unless we have a massive team. We don't really want to do that. Headcount, as I mentioned before, is the biggest part of the L part of your P&L. So we need to be able to control that. So it's creating channel relationships to be able to do that. It's empowering Niel to be able to go out and make sure that we can just do the best job that we can with the small team that we have for sales, and then expand it in a way that is just right sizing it for us as we go, but then kind of being able to just rope in external resources in terms of channel. So that's kind of what we're doing, it a bit in-house, a bit out of house in terms of sales. And then in terms of technology, again, it's headcount. So it's really being very focused on prioritizing what it is that we're going. Everything needs to be able to deliver value, You look at our backlog. Everything needs to be able to address a particular concern that a customer has already expressed. It's not about building fancy new, bells and whistles. We really need to make everything deliver value to customers.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. I just noticed we're nearly at the clock now, so probably should wrap up. Any, last words of advice for founders listening who are, possibly looking at expanding to California, or raising capital over there? Yeah, I just wondered if you've got any words of wisdom to share.
I would just say that, like I said earlier, Americans love New Zealanders. And so you're going to, and it's such a massive market that, and like Greg said earlier, if you can get one customer, that leads to 2, that leads to 4, that leads to 8, and then use those internal customers as reference points, which is what we've done a lot. But it's a wonderful opportunity over here, and it's so much fun.
Yeah. I would say just go for it. If you want to do it, you've got nothing to lose. Just give it a shot. And if you and take failure as a kind of a badge of honor. That Kiwi landing pad trip that I took 10 years ago. That was such a great learning experience, but it wasn't a successful venture experience. But I learned, so I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now or bring that experience if I hadn't have done that. So I think, just think of it as a journey and just go for it. If you want to see what it's like, the only way to do it is to do it. So yeah, that's all I would say. Hey, at the end of the day, it's just money and time, So yeah.
No, that's great advice. Thank you for that. So true. Cool. Okay, we might wrap up now. But thank you both to Niel and Greg for coming on and sharing a bit about your insights on California and a bit about ZippyAssist as well. It'll be exciting to see where you get to in the next year or so. We'll have to catch up if you've hit that 1 mil ARR. But yeah, hopefully I'll be able to catch you both either in New Zealand or California at some point in the near future. And just to note for anyone listening, this webinar has been recorded, so I'll chuck this up on our channels in the next couple of hours, so feel free to share around. But otherwise, yeah, big thanks to everyone for tuning in, and thank you to Niel and Greg.
And thank you for having us on the show. I've watched many of your shows over the years, and I've got some great advice on myself personally from other founders that have shared. So thank you guys so much.
That's good to
Yeah,
hear.
thanks, Aaliyah. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Cool. Catch you guys on the next one.